Hello students, welcome to the class of Software Engineering. Today let us begin with a new module, Module 4, Software Testing. So in this module we are going to see what is testing, what are the different types of testing, how the testing process is being conducted, and what are the major advantages of doing this testing process. So we'll begin with the definition of testing. Testing shows what the program is intended to do and also discovers the defects. So we have two parts in this definition. Testing shows what the program is intended to do. So mainly when you test anything, any component or any software or any software product. So what does it do? When you test it, it will exactly give the output, isn't it? So you'll get to know what your program is going to do. What is the purpose of that program? And also at the same time it discovers the defects. Defects means those are errors. So it highlights the errors or bugs if at all it is present. So testing process has two goals. First one, keep in mind, to demonstrate to the developer and the customer that the software meets its requirements. Now why you're carrying out the testing process? First thing is to convey that is mainly to demonstrate to the developer as well as the customer that the software will meet those requirements. It is meeting the expectations of the customers. So this goal leads to validation testing. So something we call as validation testing. So what is validation testing is where exactly you want your system to perform correctly using a given set of test cases. So you will be giving the input values, So based on that, your system should perform correctly. So that is validation testing. Second one, to discover situations where the behavior of the software is incorrect. So first one is you are checking whether your system works properly or functions properly. And second one is which is mainly you're going to highlight the behavior of the software when it is incorrect or it does not meet the specifications of your customers. So we are going to discover the situations where the behavior of the software is incorrect. When your software behaves incorrectly. So we are going to discover such cases, and also when suppose if the given requirement is not met. So we are going to discover such cases also. So this goal leads to defect testing. It is something like you are identifying the defects in your system. So if your software is incorrect means there might be some bugs or errors in your system. Or if your software is not working properly, it's not meeting the requirements, it has not been designed properly. So there might be some mistake in it. So testing can only show the presence of errors, now they are absent. So once you test a product, the main advantage is it will show the errors. So while development you may not get to know about it, but during the testing process, you will get to know such kind of errors. Now let us see the difference between validation testing and defect testing. So we have seen the goals of the testing process. One is validation testing, another one is the defect testing. Now in the diagram, let us see how it works. So you can see here, first is the input test data. So you have a system ready with you. Now you have developed the system. You have to test your system means. How do you test your system? Based on the input values which you give, correct? Based on the input values which you give. So that is input test data. We can call it as input, we can call it as test data. Okay. So that is given, and what is expected finally, because testing is something you have to get the outcome. So finally you have to get the output test results. So you have to get the result for it. Now that is actually a form of your validation testing. So I am giving the input. Okay, my input will be some requirement, you think. Okay, and I will be giving a valid input only, so that I get the expected output as it is. But defect testing, if I want to do, now this is your input test data. Here I have one section, that is IE, means these are inputs. I am giving invalid inputs or erroneous inputs, which will actually cause incorrect output, or you get some errors that will be highlighted. So OE means outputs which reveal the presence of defects. So they mainly show the presence of the defects. So you have to give invalid input. So always you see when you run your program, that's why we tell don't give the same input always. You have to go on changing the input values. Try to give some inputs which cause errors. Okay. So here the system in previous figure is being tested as a black box. So your system is considered as a black box, that is examining the functionality of the system without peering into its internal implementation. So you are looking into the functionality of the system. You are not going to deep into the implementation or the code. You are not seeing it. Just you are seeing the system functionality, whether it provides the output or the expected requirement is satisfied or not. The system accepts inputs from input set I and generates outputs in an output set O. That is your same validation testing. But some of the outputs are erroneous. These are the outputs in set O which are generated by the input set I. Okay, it should be I. So defect testing mainly finds those inputs in set I which creates problems. Okay, so validation testing is testing only with the correct inputs. That's why what I've told, valid inputs that are outside I, which generates the expected outputs. Now next we'll see difference between verification and validation. These are the two terms, okay? Verification and validation. So you must understand these two terms, how they are different. Okay? So first difference, validation. Are we building the right product? Verification. Are we building the product right? So validation is we are seeing whether the product whether we are building the right product or not. And verification is we are verifying our software till the end we get a correct product. Understood? So validation is we are trying to build the right product. And verification is we will be going on performing or going on verifying our system till we get the product right. So validation is like you're checking that the software meets the customer expectations. So you know that at the beginning the requirements will be framed, that is by the customer as well as the developer. So you are trying to develop the system based on those requirements, correct? Based on those requirements. So how do you validate your system is just you're seeing whether your software will satisfy those requirements. Verification is what? You're checking whether your system will satisfy all those requirements. That is, we are taking functional requirements, non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirements like your what is the availability, what is the reliability of your software, what is the safety issue, security issue, all those you are considering. So in verification. Okay. So the goal of verification and validation is to establish confidence that the software system is fit for purpose. So we are mainly having this verification and validation process in order to build a software to say that it is fit for purpose, means it is fit for this purpose, whatever purpose you have designed. Now, the level of confidence, that level of confidence depends on several factors. Let us see the first one, that is software purpose. See, if the software is more critical, then it should be more reliable. So, see, some softwares may not be critical, some will be very critical. Like for the air traffic system, whatever software you design is, in such cases, it is more critical. Correct? Then it should be more reliable. So, for example, the level of confidence required for software used to control a safety critical system. Even your insulin pump system is a safety critical system. Safety critical system. So what is the level of confidence required for that software is much higher than that required for a prototype. So imagine, prototype is just a sample model. Like, see, when you build a software, nowadays you have seen lot of videos. So they show the demo of their model. So such type of model is going to be built. So they just show the prototype, that is sample model. It works like that. May not be included all the functionalities there. So the level of confidence in building the prototype is less than building the actual product. B. User expectations. See, because of their experiences with unreliable software, many users have low expectations of software quality. So when I tell here, our main aim of this testing our software product is in order to see that our product is error free. First thing is error free and the quality. That's why I told that in verification we have non-functional requirements also. So you must see the quality, that is because finally what is that, the quality comes first. So quality of the software should be achieved, and the availability or usability, that is all more important. Okay, so they are not surprised when their software fails. When a new system is installed, users may tolerate failures. So you know that while building the system, or once the system is built and put into use, there might be still some errors or failures which may not be have recognized during the development phase. But once the error is once your system has been failed, you should not be disappointed, because it is the actual way to improve your software. So you will try to overcome that failure, try to repair that failure and achieve still more good quality. C. Marketing environment. See, here the thing is, you have developed the software, now you have to put into market. Now main thing is your product should be sold and it should be used. So that's why we have one more marketing team, sales and marketing team. So once you market the software as a product, it all depends on your seller who is selling that product, because that stage is also very important in your software process. We think only development is important, testing is important, but marketing is also important, because it depends on the seller. He has to make that product a very competitive one, because there is a lot of competition. So he has to consider it as a competitive product. The seller should know about the price of the software that the customer is willing to pay, and also know about the required schedule for delivering the system. So here the seller should have an idea how much the customer will be able to pay that software, okay, once it has been developed and been launched. And another thing is, he must know that clearly that when that software should be delivered to that customer, because when they are expecting, that is important. So when you deliver it on the given time or given scheduled time, that will be a very plus point in this competitive environment. Sometimes there are cases like software company may decide to release the software before it has been tested and debugged. That case also happens sometimes because just they are in the curiosity just building the software, but they don't test it. They have only one mentality that within this time period I have to finish the product and give it to the user. So like they want to become first. That's all. That is their intention. Now, verification and validation involves inspections and reviews. So these are other two terms, inspections and reviews, which will be used in this testing process throughout. So you must understand those two terms, inspections and reviews. Inspections and reviews analyze and check the system requirements, design models, the source code, and propose systems test. So these are also called as static verification and validation because one need not execute the software to verify it. Now what is this inspections and reviews is different from your testing. Okay. See, testing is you're running your code, but in inspection and review you're not executing the code. What you're going to do is just keep on analyzing. Like first they might analyze the SRS. So they will start reading the requirements, whether they are valid, whether your system has achieved. Then they will analyze the design models which you have built. Then the source code they will analyze. They're not going to test on. And what all test cases you have built. All things they will analyze to see whether it satisfies or not. So this is called static verification and validation. Static means it's not dynamic, static because you're not executing the code. Now let us see about this inspection process and let us compare with the testing process. So we have this figure. This figure shows that software inspections and testing support V&V, that is verification and validation, at different stages in the software process. So here you can see first you have inspections and then you can see requirement specification, software architecture, UML design models, database schemas, program. So what does it mean that your inspection is a process where you are going to analyze and review the requirement specification. I told that they will first read the SRS. So to get to know what exactly is the system, what are the functionalities of the system. So everything you can now see pros and cons of that. And then they will look at the architecture of your software system, how it looks, what is the framework. And then they will see the UML design models. Now you have to design your system. So you might have used several UML models there to represent your system. So they will be analyzing all those models. So what happens? They will be getting to know still deeper about your system. Then database schemas is something like suppose your software is related to database. Some connection it has with the database means. So if your project needs database, then you are going to use the database there. So you have to create a database and then there will be tables in that. So all those schemas you are going to inspect it. So it's like you have database schemas which mainly show what all tables are there and what all attributes are there in the table and how they are related to other tables. Then program. Last they will go to see the program, that is your source code. So they will be reviewing the source code. So that is one thing. See, from here in the requirements specification, just by reading the requirements, initially you will build a sample model, that is your system prototype I've told. And testing process, testing process is actually done on the program. That's the difference between inspection and testing. So testing is done on the program and also on the prototype, also on the prototype. Now we'll see the advantages of software inspection over testing. What is the advantage? See, during testing, errors can mask other errors. Mask means hide other errors. There is a certain chance. See, sometimes you run a program and you see that only one error is there. And when you try to resolve that error slowly and you try to remove that error, later you will get more than one error sometimes, chances like 30 errors. So that previous error has masked the other errors. So errors can mask other errors. So in testing process, so you cannot get to know all the errors, I can tell. But in the single inspection process, you can discover many defects because you're going to analyze each and everything. Second one, incomplete versions of a system can be inspected without additional cost. Now, suppose still something is incomplete left in your system to be implemented, still that you can inspect it without additional cost. If a program is incomplete, then you need to develop specialized test harness to test the parts that are available. So this will obviously add to your system development cost. So this will add to your system development cost. Third one, in testing, you are mainly searching for defects, no? What are the errors? But in inspection, the main thing is you can look for the quality attributes such as portability, how much portable your system is, maintainability, how much, what might be the maintenance cost required for your product, or how much time it might take, how long you can maintain that software. And you can also look for some of the inefficiencies. Suppose you have used any algorithms or some algorithms, so you can see the complexity of the algorithm. Then poor programming style, what is that? Poor programming style. Now, if you have used one programming style, you can look at whether it is efficient and you can go for another programming style. So we'll see the model of the software testing process. A model of the software testing process. So this is the diagram. Okay. So first you're building the test cases. So you have to design the test cases. Design the test cases initially. So these test cases will be input. Then you have to prepare the test data. Now you have designed the test cases. Now you have to keep ready the test data. So this is the test data. Means the data which you're feeding to test your system. Run next, you have the data. So run the program with test data. Run the program with test data. After running, you will get the results. Test results. Store it. And then compare the results to test cases. So you have to compare your test results to the test cases which you have designed. So in test case, what you are including, it's like a table form, okay? Tabular form you can include, test case name you can have, description you can have, test data, what is the input given and what is the expected output you can write. Expected output. So you can compare that results to that expected output, and you can generate the test reports. You can generate the test reports. So test cases are specifications of the inputs to the test. So what are test cases? This is a new term now. So they are specifications of the input to the test. Nothing but input data, what you are going to give. And the expected output from the system, I said you should include the result also, test result, plus a statement of what is being tested. You can give a description also of what exactly you are going to test. And what is test data? They are the inputs that you are giving to test your system. Okay. So test data is input, test cases are all these specifications. What you are going to test, what is the input, What is the output you have to specify? Now, test data can sometimes be generated automatically. That also can be done. Instead of giving manually, you can generate the test data automatically. But automatic test case generation is impossible. Impossible, as people who understand what the system is supposed to do must be involved to specify the expected test results. So if it is automatically generation, that is actually impossible, automatically generating the test cases, and it is also difficult for the people to actually specify what is the output, expected output. So however, test execution can be automated. You can make the execution of the test as automated. The expected results are automatically compared with the predicted results, correct? So there is no need for a person to look for errors and anomalies in the test run. Errors and anomalies in the test run. Okay. Now we'll move on to development testing. What do you mean by development testing? It includes all testing activities that are carried out by the team developing the system. So development testing is carried out by the software developer team, So while developing the software, they are going to carry out these testing processes. So which are they? During development, testing is carried at 3 levels. One is unit testing, second one is component testing, third one is system testing. Okay, so development testing is the testing activities which are carried during the development stage by the members, by the engineers who are developing the software. So 3 levels are there: unit testing, component testing, system testing. Now let us discuss about each one of them. First one is unit testing. So the word itself only you can get to know what is unit testing. Unit is a single component. So you are testing a single component. So it can be, what can be the component? It can be a function or a method or a class. When you are testing object classes, consider the following test. First one, now suppose you are testing a class, okay? That means you have to consider these tests. First one, you have to test all operations associated with the object. So test all the methods which are associated with your object. Second one, set and check the value of all attributes associated with the object. So there will be an object for your class. So you have attributes for your class, isn't it? So you have to set and check the value of that attributes. C, put the object into all possible states. That is very important. This means that you should simulate all events that cause a state change. So you have to try to put your object in all possible states. So for that you have to trigger the events and check whether the state transition has occurred or not. So we'll consider the following example. See, this is just a interface. This is weather station object interface. Weather station object interface. So this is an example for your weather station object interface. So here weather station object has a single attribute, which is that it's identifier. So this is unique, okay. This is a constant, so it will be a constant value that is set when the weather station is installed. So it is set when the weather station is installed. So one thing is you need to test to check whether this identifier value has been set properly or not. And you need to define the test cases for all the methods such as report weather, report status, etc. So main important thing is you have this attribute, you have to test in order to see whether the value of that attribute has been set properly or not. Then you have to test all these methods also, whether it functions properly or not. Like you have report weather method, report status method. Sometimes test sequences should be also tested. So you have to test the sequences also. Like for example, if you want to test the shutdown method that shuts down the weather station instruments, one needs to have executed the restart method. Correct? So that is the sequence. So testing the states of the weather station is also essential. It is very, very important. So let us take one example, because already you have learnt about the state diagram of weather station. So here from the shutdown state you are moving to running state, and from running you can move back to shutdown state when shutdown message is received. Now you have to see that this particular test sequence is running properly or not. That is, when the event is triggered, from the shutdown state your state has been moved to running state, you need to see. Then another test sequence, configuring state to running state, from running to testing state, testing to transmitting state, transmitting to running state. So this sequence also you had seen in the state diagram. So you have to even test the sequence, whether it goes in that same order or not. So testing needs to be done on everything. Like you have to test the attributes, you have to test the methods, you have to test the sequences. As much as possible, go for automate unit testing, which is very easy. Okay, you can go for automate unit testing. In automated unit testing, a test automation framework you have that is called JUnit, that is used to write and run the program test. Write and run the program test. So you can use that framework. An automated test has three parts. Keep in mind, an automated test has three parts. First one is a setup part. So what is this setup part? Here you do the initialization. So you initialize the system with the test case, namely the inputs and the expected outputs you put. Second one is a call part. What is this a call part? Where you call the object or the method to be tested. So that is the call part. And an assertion part is what? So you call the method, you get the result, isn't it? So you are comparing the result of the call with the expected result. Already in the test case you have written expected result. So if the assertion evaluates to true, the test has been successful. The test has been successful. If false, then it says that the test has failed. The test has failed. Next we'll see choosing the unit test cases. Choosing unit test cases. So testing is at the last stage, but it's time consuming and also it's expensive. So you have to choose effective unit test cases. Okay. An effective test case should be, how it should be? First one, the test cases should show that the component that you're testing does what it is supposed to do. So how to write the test cases? How to choose the test cases? That is important. So first point is you design the test case in such a way that now if you're testing a particular component, it should show that what it has to do. What is its functionality? Then, if there are defects in the component, these should be revealed by the test cases. So you build the test cases in such a way that the errors are highlighted or defects are highlighted. Clear? So one should write two kinds of test case. First one is, it should reflect the normal operation of a program. Initially I have told in validation testing, no? So it should reflect the normal operation of a program and should show that how the component works. So how to write a test case? First point is, you build test cases which mainly show what is the functionality of your system or the components in that system. Second one is, should be based on testing experience of where common problems arise. So where exactly the problems arise, you should be able to identify while building the test case. Clear? So you have to write the test case in such a way that it should highlight the errors. Two different strategies that help in choosing effective test case. We'll see the two different strategies which help in choosing effective test case. One is partition testing. Partition testing. So already you know the meaning of partition. Okay, so let us see partition testing. See, you are identifying groups of inputs that have common characteristics. So mainly here in partition testing means you have to first identify groups of inputs that are having common features. So you have to choose test from within each of these groups. So the input data and output results of a program often fall into a number of different classes with common characteristics. Correct? For example, of these classes are, see, when you consider numbers, we have one class positive numbers, another one is negative numbers, then zero, all those are there. So that is, if you test a program that does a computation and requires two positive numbers, if it is taking two positive numbers, then what will be the output? Positive. So you have to take different groups there. See, if you have written a program also and you are testing it, when you do partition testing means you are doing partition for the input groups only. So if I give two positive values, I should get a positive output. If I am giving two negative values, then negative output. So because of this equivalent behavior, these classes, so one category or one class is called as equivalence partitions or domains. So each class that is called as equivalence class or partition. So we'll look at the figure 1, which will explain clearly. The figure name is equivalence partitioning. So this category is the possible inputs you can see, and this is the possible output. So input is given to the system to produce the output. Okay. So the large shaded ellipse on the left represents the set of all possible inputs to the program that is being tested. So here we are testing the input groups. The smaller unshaded ellipses represent equivalence partitions. See, can you see is this entire set is input. So that we are again categorizing into different classes or different groups which have same common characteristics. So see here, this is one group, one class I can tell. This is another one. This is another one. This is another one. So we have 4 equivalence partitions. So that is called as equivalence partitions. These unshaded ellipses, these are called as equivalence partitions. So they are having common features there. Okay. So when you test this input, you are getting this is the possible output. So look at the output partitions. That is not equivalence partition, keep in mind. These are just the output partitions. Next, a program being tested should process all of the members of an input equivalence partitions in the same way. So when you are testing means you should test all possible inputs. So all possible equivalence partitions of input needs to be tested. Output equivalence partitions are partitions within which all of the outputs have something in common. So the shaded area in the left ellipse represents inputs that are invalid. The shaded area in the right ellipse represents exceptions that may occur. That is after getting the response to invalid inputs. So once you have identified a set of partitions, keep in mind, you have to choose the test cases from each of these partitions. So first you have the input group, now you are partitioning it, means categorizing into different groups. So each group is called equivalence partition, means it is having common characteristics. A good rule of, so then you have to choose test cases from each of these partitions. So I'll take first test case for this one, this group. Next test case for this equivalence partition, I can take like this might be positive group. So I will take a test case for this one first, positive numbers. This might be negative numbers, so I'll build a test case for negative numbers. Okay. A good rule of thumb for test case selection is to choose test cases on the boundaries of the partitions. So this is important. A good rule of thumb for test case selection is to choose test cases on the boundaries of the system. That is also better. Plus cases close to the midpoint of the partition. So if you have the partition, you can better choose test cases related to the boundary as well as the midpoint of your partition. Choose the test cases related to the boundary as well as midpoint of the partition. We'll see one example here which will show the meaning of that good rule of thumb. So we are taking an example where program accepts 4 to 8 inputs. How many inputs it can take? 4 to 8, which are 5-digit integers greater than 10,000. We are taking 5-digit integers greater than 10,000. So we will do the partition testing now. So you have to build test cases. How will you build test cases is first partition your input, means make it into groups, and each group or each partition is called equivalence partition. So it is having some common characteristics. So now our input values I'll categorize into 3 partitions. Look at here. First partition is less than 4. How many input values it will take? How many input values? 4 to 8, no? So first category I'll take less than 4. If I give less than 4, your program should not work. So less than 4, one equivalence partition. Next, between 4 and 10, and third partition will be more than 10. Now I told that you have to take mainly focus on the boundaries of the partition and also on the midpoint of the partition. Can you see now, if I take less than 4, what is the boundary here lying? 3. And when I take between 4 and 10, here the next boundary is 4. And here the last boundary is 10. In between that, the midpoint we are taking is 7. Midpoint we are taking is 7. Okay. Now more than 10, the boundary value is 11. It starts from 11. Now this is one type of partition. One more I can do, we'll look at the second half of our question. Program accepts 4 to 8 inputs. So we have done the equivalence partitioning here. Now, which are 5-digit integers greater than 10,000? So now for this value, I'll put the equivalence partition. First partition less than 10,000. Next, between 10,000 and 99,999 and more than 99,999. So if I take the boundary values, less than 10,000 means last boundary value is 9,999. Here the boundary value is 10,000 to 99,999. Midpoint is 50,000, and here more than 99,999 means it is 1 lakh, the boundary value. Here, so it gives a clear picture here. Thank you.